All right, so we're doing Come Follow Me, March 28th through April 3rd, which is Exodus 7 through 13. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just read Exodus 7 through 13 and give my commentary as I've already read the chapters and I've had thoughts come to me. I wrote some stuff down. So um, these are just my own thoughts from reading it, and then we'll get into the actual Come Follow Me lesson, and we will go over what the church has put out, and we'll see how my thoughts and things that I wrote down compare. So, Exodus 7, chapter 7, the heading reads Moses is appointed to give the word of the Lord to Pharaoh. The Lord will multiply signs and wonders in Egypt. Aaron's rod becomes a serpent. The river is turned into blood. The magicians imitate the miracles of Moses and Aaron. So, and the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. One of the notes I wrote down was that the Joseph Smith translation here is crucial. The thought came to me that when the Bible was first translated into English, I had to wonder how the guy doing it didn't realize how this part sounds just off. I'm no scholar, so I have no idea when this was, but I feel like the guy translating it just missed the mark completely. There is a completely different meaning from God hardening Pharaoh's heart, and by doing so, taking away his free will, and Pharaoh hardening his own heart. So, God, if nothing else, wants us to have choice and free will, and the way it reads is God takes away Pharaoh's free will. So Joseph Smith translation for the win on that one. Verse 4, But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgment. And again, to me, this part doubles down that it was translated wrong initially. The part where it says, But Pharaoh shall not hearken, this denotes free will. So if he has free will, one verse after it was taken away, then mayhaps the first one was an error. Verse 5, And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. I did write another little note on this part. I wonder if this is how it will be when the saints are protected in the last days. It talks about bringing out the children of Israel from among them. And, there's all sorts of different revelations and prophecies that talk about the saints, coming together in Zion and things like that. And I just have to wonder how it's going to be when the saints need to flee from their places. But verse 6, And Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spake unto Pharaoh. So for those of you who don't know, that's 80 and 83 years old. And this Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, When Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, Shew a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, Take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. So I just found that interesting that basically the Lord told Moses, so Moses knew going into it that Pharaoh would doubt him. So he already knew he was going to throw the rod and turn it into a serpent. Alrighty, so verse 10. And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded, and Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. So between 9 and 10, it kind of feels like there's a lot of missing story here. Maybe it just wasn't important enough to be written down. But one thing of note is the fact that Moses just went in to see Pharaoh. I personally tend to forget that amongst the Egyptians, Moses was like royalty. If Pharaoh saw Moses as a slave or as a descendant of Israel rather than a brother, then Moses never would have been able to just walk up to him and then throw a snake at him. So it's definitely, Moses definitely has privileges around Egypt that most people don't, which is a lot of why he was able to do what he did in the next couple chapters. So verse 11, then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rods swallowed up their rods. Satan's power is very real, and it is very dangerous, but it is only an imitation of God's power. Right here is a perfect example of that. That being said, if the magicians were to throw down their rod and turn it into a serpent against a random Egyptian that didn't believe in God, that Egyptian would fall before Satan's power. He could get bit, he could get injured. But in the face of God's power, the serpents were devoured. It was Moses' serpent that devoured the sorcerer's serpents, not Moses himself. So again, it's not like Moses went and stomped on the serpents. He relied on God's power to protect him, which I think is really of note. We too can wield God's power being the priesthood, as a weapon to fend off Satan's assaults. If we try and do it ourselves, then that's where we can fall into trouble. But if we rely on God and the power that he gives us, then we stand a chance. And he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. Again, same as before, Joseph Smith translation is crucial here. The actual translation is, and Pharaoh hardened his heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said, instead of, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart. 14, and the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuseth to let the people go. This verse right here, I had a lot of thought, and it's not that long, but I'll just read off what I wrote. I feel like the only reason God had to tell Moses this is because Moses truly felt like this would be like a one-time meeting with Pharaoh. Maybe Moses was desperate to change Pharaoh's mind because he knew what lie in wait if Pharaoh's mind wouldn't change. Moses and Pharaoh were like brothers, so if you know your brother's actions were going to lead to so much pain and anguish, you'd be desperate to convince him. So God had to pretty much tell Moses, you have to leave, you won't convince him yet. And again, that verse, and the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. And on its surface, the verse kind of seems like, well, yeah, his heart is hardened, but I think Moses had a hard time accepting that because he wanted so desperately for Pharaoh to listen to the counsel of God, because he knew that if Pharaoh continued to be stubborn, that pain was coming. So on the 15, get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth out unto the water, and thou shalt stand by the river's brink. Against he come, and the rod which was turned to a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand. And thou shalt say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews hath sent me unto thee, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. I feel like the end of this verse is evidence to what I said about verse 14. It kind of indicates that Moses pleaded with Pharaoh, but thou wouldest not hear. It just kind of tells me, based off of how I'm reading it, that it's almost like a plea. Like, I'm telling you, you got to let them go, but you won't listen to me, is kind of how I see Moses saying this. 17, thus saith the Lord, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the rivers, or upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that is in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. I just said that would suck. Verse 19, and the Lord spake unto Moses, say unto Aaron, take thy rod, and stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, upon their streams, upon the rivers, and upon their ponds, and upon all their pools of water, that they may become blood, and that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. This is interesting. It says here that Aaron is actually the one to turn the water to blood. I did not know that before I read this. I just always assumed that Moses was the one to perform all of the plagues, but it says right there that Aaron did it. So that's kind of cool. And the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them, as the Lord had said. So I have to wonder here, did they really do that? Did the magicians really change the water into blood? Because kind of seems like they just pretended to. I mean, it says Moses and Aaron turned all the water to blood, both in the vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. And so I think there was like a vase of water on the boat, and the priests were like, oh yeah, we were totally the ones that turned this water into blood. Definitely wasn't Moses. It was us. So I don't know. I mean, based off the scripture, then they did mimic again God's power. But I have to wonder, did they just lie about turning the water into blood because they didn't want to get, I don't know, killed by Pharaoh? Yeah. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house, neither did he set his heart to this also. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. And 7 days were fulfilled after that the Lord had smitten the river. All right, so that's the end of chapter 7. A lot of really interesting insights for me during that one. I can't remember the last time, if ever, I've read the Old Testament. So it's really kind of interesting going into it and trying to take notes and trying to figure out exactly what actually happened back then and how it relates to today. I think in 7 through 13, there's a lot of similarities between the plagues that plagued Egypt and a lot of the turmoil and contention that's going on today, and what we can do to protect ourselves from the adversary. So, alrighty, so we are moving into chapter 8 of Exodus. We'll just jump right into it. The heading for chapter 8 says, the Lord sends plagues of frogs, lice, and flies upon Egypt. Pharaoh hardens his heart. The plagues of Egypt, they're pretty terrifying to read about them, but it really makes me wonder what plagues, if you will, are going to be coming our way in the next, decade. But so starting on verse 1, and the Lord spake unto Moses, go unto Pharaoh and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thine ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up both on thee, and upon thy people, and upon all thy servants. And the Lord spake unto Moses, say unto Aaron, stretch forth thine hand with thy rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. So, yeah, one thing I noticed is that it kind of seems like they skipped the whole part about them talking to Pharaoh. They just went straight from, if thou refuse to let them go, I will smite with frogs, and then verse 5, do it. So I guess they kind of skipped the part where Pharaoh said no, but I'm sure he did. Verse 6, and Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. Once again, I noticed it's Aaron who is performing this particular plague, not Moses. So, yeah, that's something I never noticed. Hearing about this story, I just always assumed that it was Moses who caused the plagues into action. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. So once again, I feel like these magicians are just using what has already happened and are taking credit for it. Like Aaron and Moses are doing, but let's say they really are also doing these plagues. All they are really accomplishing is doubling the amount of affliction that Egypt is suffering. If let's say there was a section of land that didn't have frogs, then the magicians go in and they're like, well, now it does. Yeah, that's where my brain goes. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may do sacrifice unto the Lord. And Moses said unto Pharaoh, glory over me, when shall I entreat for thee, and for thy servants and for thy people to destroy the frogs from thee and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only. You can almost sense Moses' relief in his voice when, like, just the glory over me. It's almost like an exasperated, like, finally, we don't have to make this worse. He agreed to let us go. I don't have to cause plagues to end Egypt. All right, starting on verse 10, he said, and he said, tomorrow, and he said, be it according to thy word, that thou mayest know that there is none like unto the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from thee, and from thy houses, and from thy servants, and from thy people, they shall remain in the river only. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord, because of the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages, and out of the fields. And they gathered them together upon heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart, and hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So first thing I noticed is the translator got it right that time. He said that he hardened his heart, not the Lord hardened his heart. But also Pharaoh's actions here kind of show a super entitled side to Pharaoh. Pharaoh did something wrong. God sent a plague, and Pharaoh says, take away the frogs and I'll let your people go. But then the frogs stink. So it's like Pharaoh was expecting there to be absolutely no consequences for his actions. He thought everything would immediately go back to how things were. And he expected his actions to just have no consequences whatsoever. And when there were consequences, he rescinded his offer of letting the people go. I know that I personally have fallen into this trap of doing something I'm not supposed to, and then changing what I'm doing in order to make whatever bad thing go away. And when it doesn't immediately go away, then I kind of get the thought of, but I started doing what I'm supposed to. Why isn't the bad stuff going away? And one thing that I think we need to realize is consequences of our actions remain whether we change. The action has already happened, and God can't control the consequences that come our way. It's kind of like a story that a friend of mine told me of his brother who spent his entire life smoking and drinking, and he ended up with lung cancer and had to have all these surgeries, and he was left, pretty much unable to do anything with his life. And he looked at my friend and said, "How could God do this to me?" And my friend just looked at me and said, "God didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself. You can't God can't control the consequences that come of your actions." And so I think that's kind of what Pharaoh was expecting. Back to the point is Pharaoh was expecting his actions to be forgiven and everything would go back to the way it was, but the land stank because the frogs had already come. So after that rant, let's keep going. Verse 16. And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth. And it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. My guess, it being Egypt, is that there's a lot of dust, so that's got to have been a lot of lice. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there was lice upon man and upon beast. Yeah, that would be a hard one for them to mimic, just turning dust into lice. So, and you can see here, this is the start of where, the magicians relying on Satan's power were able to mimic God's power at the beginning. But as the plagues become more and more powerful, the magicians are no longer able to mimic God's power, and eventually, well, we'll get to that point, I guess, when I read it. Verse 19. Then the magicians said unto Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So this verse right here kind of made me think a little bit more about the translations that had gotten wrong. It says, as the Lord had said. This to me is more proof of the incorrect translation. I think what this is referring to, because at least from what I remember, there's not anywhere that it actually says that God told Moses that Pharaoh's heart would be hardened. It just said that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. But I think that what it meant to say is that God was telling Moses that Pharaoh's heart would be hardened. And I think that the original translation put that God hardened his heart, when in reality it was just God telling Moses that his heart would be hardened. And I feel like this verse kind of is proof of that, saying, as the Lord had said, showing that he said at some point that Pharaoh's heart will be hardened. So on to verse 20. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. This this really makes me think about prophecies of these last days, mainly the ones about the righteous being protected in the last days. So it makes me wonder if that will be the purpose of the gathering of Zion, so that way, once again, God can sever the land so that the afflictions that are the rest of the world will not afflict Zion. I have no idea if that's the case. It's just something that I kind of think about with all the turmoil that's going on in the world and how God will protect his saints from the upcoming plagues, if you will. So verse 24, and the Lord did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servant's house, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron and said, Go ye, sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he shall command us. And Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that ye may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only ye shall not go very far away. Entreat for me. I think it is important to note here that initially Moses was not asking to flee for good. That inevitably happened, but initially he was only asking for some time to make sacrifices. And you will see that Pharaoh does not want to run the risk of them leaving forever, and by doing so actually causes them to leave forever. But had Pharaoh allowed them to just go the first time, they probably would have left for 3 days and come back, because that's what they promised to do. But because Pharaoh was so stubborn, he ended up being the cause of what he was afraid of. So a little interesting to me that initially Moses was not commanded to ask for a permanent leave. They was just asking to go make sacrifices. And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more, and not letting thy people go to sacrifice to the Lord. It's crazy to me how many times Pharaoh lies. I don't know the length of time between all of the plagues. I'm sure someone has done that research and really delved into it, but it seems like it's not a long period of time. I would give it the most maybe 6 months. So 10 plagues, and in that time, Pharaoh at least 5 times says he'll let them go and then changes his mind. That's really fast to forget. And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord, and the Lord did according to the word of Moses. And he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. There remained not one. And Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go. So, like I said, Pharaoh lied. So that's the end of chapter 8. Stick around and we will get into reading chapter 9. We have to get all the way through chapter 13, so strap in, because we've got a lot to read. So the heading for chapter 9, the Lord destroys the cattle of the Egyptians, but not of the Israelites. Boils and blains are set upon the Egyptians. The Lord sends hail and fire upon the people of Pharaoh, but not upon the people of Israel. So this will be an interesting one. Then the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh and tell him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and wilt hold them still, Behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle, which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous murrain. I didn't know what murrain was, so the topical guide says murrain is a plague. So a very grievous plague. And the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall nothing die of all that is the children of Israel. And the Lord appointed a set time, saying, tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land. And I'm thinking, like, at this point, Pharaoh has to know Moses isn't messing around. So, like, he's told all your livestock are going to die. And it's almost like Pharaoh's like, we'll see about that. And every single time it happens, and he's just like, okay, uncle. And then as soon as there's immediate relief, he immediately goes back to hardening his heart. Verse 6, and the Lord did that thing on the morrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died, but of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. So it's interesting, and Pharaoh sent. So that to me shows he didn't quite believe that it would happen. He had to go and send someone to verify that his cattle died, but not of the Israelites. So interesting to see that point of view. For whatever reason, Pharaoh did not believe that another plague would hit like that. Verse 8. Actually, I had written something down for verse 7. I put, part of me thinks that Pharaoh is a masochist. I'm sure in reality it's pride. Like, imagine a similar situation. Imagine President Russell M. Nelson going up to pretty much any politician now and telling them that they need to make X, Y, and Z bill, or plagues will happen. More than likely, the politician would deny God's hand in it and blame it on global warming or something like that. They would find anything to say, it was a coincidence. And I think that's why in verse 7, he sent someone to go check, because if it was a coincidence, then surely some of the Israelites' cattle would die as well. But they didn't. And so at that point, it's just straight up denial. He's denying the hand of God, even though it is causing himself and his people great pain. So, verse 8, and the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it toward the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. One thought I had about this was, I wondered if this was akin to wiping the dust off of your feet. So yeah, I have no idea if it is the same. But just the sprinkling of the dust towards Pharaoh, to me, kind of gave me a wiping the dust off your feet vibe. And if so, that's pretty powerful stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a thought I had, I guess. So verse 9, and it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beasts throughout all the land of Egypt. And they took ashes of the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses sprinkled it up toward heaven, and it became a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boil was upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. I think this verse is really funny. It's like the magicians are all cocky, and Moses sets boils on them, and in my mind they basically run away. They're like getting ready to throw dust back at Moses, and they're just afflicted with these boils and have to flee before him, or risk being wiped away from the power of God. So I thought that was a really funny verse. Verse 12, And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had spoken unto Moses. Once again, wrong translation. Correct translation is, and Pharaoh hardened his heart. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou mayest know that there is none like me in all the earth. I feel like this was kind of a point of no return. Kind of like a do this or the really bad plagues are coming. And, we do see bad plagues immediately after this. Not that the other ones weren't bad, but they get really bad. For now I will stretch out my hand, that I may smite thee and thy people with pestilence, and thou shalt be cut off from the earth. And in very deed from this cause have I raised thee up, for to shew in thee my power, and that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. As yet exaltest thou thyself against my people, that thou wilt not let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as hath not been in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Send therefore now and gather thy cattle and all that thou hast in the field, for upon every man and beast which shall be found in the field and shall not be brought home, the hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. I'm really curious how big the hail is. I'm imagining like basketball-sized hail. Something that will kill every beast and man in the field. It's got to have been big. He that feared the Lord, the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh, made his servants and his cattle flee into the house. I'm kind of wondering how many feared the Lord. Like, do you think it was 50-50, or do you think the majority kept their people out in the field, or the majority brought them in? I don't know. And he that regarded not the word of the Lord left his servants and his cattle in the field. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt, since it became a nation. That would be super terrifying. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail smote every herb of the field, and brake every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. And Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron, and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Right here you can see that he does recognize that he is sinning. But as soon as the bad thing goes away, I'm sure that Satan is right there whispering little lies like, this was all coincidence. Think of how far back your pyramid will get set back if you let every slave go for 3 days, things like that. And he clearly adheres to what Satan is whispering to him, because it's not long before he immediately hardens his heart again. Verse 28, Entreat the Lord, for it is enough, that there be no more mighty thunderings and hails, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, As soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto the Lord, and the thunder shall cease, neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know how that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not yet fear the Lord God. And the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bold. But the wheat and the rice were not smitten, for they were not grown up. I feel like Moses is trying everything to prove that this is God's power. And Pharaoh just is not willing to, in his mind, I'm guessing, look like the weaker man. But it costs Egypt dearly. And Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread abroad his hands unto the Lord. And the thunders and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more, and hardened his heart, he and his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, neither would he let the children of Israel go, as the Lord had spoken by Moses. This is probably how Moses knew in verse 30 that his heart would not be softened, because God told him. It says in verse 30, I know that you will not yet fear the Lord God. And I think he knew that because in verse 35 it says, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, neither would he let the children of Israel go, as the Lord had spoken by Moses. So, Moses knew before he ended that plague that it would essentially be for naught, because Pharaoh's heart was still hardened. So there is the end of chapter 9. We will get into chapter 10 next. The heading states, the Lord sends a plague of locusts. This is followed by thick darkness in all Egypt for 3 days. Moses is cast out from the presence of Pharaoh. And the Lord said unto Moses, go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart. Again, the Joseph Smith translation is, for he hath hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants. Therefore I will show these my signs before him. For I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, that I might shew these my signs before him. And that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son, what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know how that I am the Lord. And Moses and Aaron came in unto Pharaoh, and said unto him, thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow will I bring the locusts into thy coast, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. And they shall fill thy house, they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's servants said unto him, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? I think it's important to note here that the people are panicking. This is, I think, the start of when Pharaoh's servants are fearing Moses and God more than they fear Pharaoh. In any other circumstance, I think that they would be terrified to question Pharaoh, but here they're pleading with him to just let the men go. And in verse 8, and Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, go, serve the Lord your God, but who are they that shall go? And Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds will we go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. And he said unto them, let the Lord be so with you, as I will let you go, and your little ones. Look to it, for evil is before you. And what this means is you are bent on mischief. Basically, Pharaoh is convinced that if he lets everybody go, then they'll never return. So he is saying, if basically his mentality, I think, is if the women and children are still here, then the men have to come back because they wouldn't abandon the women and children. And verse 11, not so, go now ye that are men and serve the Lord, for that ye did desire. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. But as we have seen in all throughout the scriptures, there is no negotiating with God. God wants something, then we have to do that thing. We can't say, well, isn't this good enough? Isn't that good enough? The answer is no. That's not what God asked for, and so therefore it is not good enough. Pharaoh tries desperately to ensure that the people won't leave, but this ultimately is the cause that they end up leaving permanently. So on to verse 12. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail hath left. And Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day, and all that night, and when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. I have to wonder where exactly the locusts came from, because it took 2 days almost to get the locusts from wherever they were over into Egypt. So I'm kind of curious, like, where they all were before the wind and what were they doing there. Like, what did that place look like before they were sent over to Egypt? Verse 14, and the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested in all the coasts of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. So kind of similar verbiage to, Noah and the ark. Never before was there such rain, and never after will there be such. So kind of an interesting verbiage. I feel like it is said in this way to give the magnitude of just how awful this particular plague was. All of the food, all of the greenery was eaten up by locusts in probably a matter of hours. This would lead to extreme food shortages, which, looking at nowadays, maybe a little bit similar to what we're experiencing with some of the shortages that we've got going on. So verse 15, for they covered the face of the whole earth so that the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. And there remained not any green thing in the trees or in the herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. So once again, he is brought to some level of humility, and in this moment, while the bad thing is happening, he is fearful of God. Verse 17, now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God, that he may take away from me this death only. And he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the coasts of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Again, Joseph Smith translation, Pharaoh hardened his own heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go. 21, and the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. I feel like this particularly would be doubly terrifying, as they just barely dealt with locusts everywhere, eating everything, crawling on them. And sure, the locusts are gone now, but my mentality would be like, well, but what if they come back? Not knowing what's going on between Moses and Pharaoh and stuff, having the locusts everywhere and then having darkness immediately afterwards. I would constantly feel like something is crawling on me, which would not be fun. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. I already read that. So 24. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. Once again, he is trying to negotiate with God. It's like, okay, you can take the women and the children, but leave your herds. Mentality being, well, they can't survive in the wilderness without their flocks. So if they leave those, then they'll have to come back. And it's a very extreme example, but me in my own life, I've done things similar to this. Things like, well, if X, Y, and Z thing happens, then I'll go to church, or I'll stop committing my sin if I get a sign. And it was true then, and it's true now. It is extremely dangerous language that does not ever benefit yourself in the long run. Negotiating with God is, it just never works out for you. You have to lead with faith, and you won't need the signs that you're looking for. If you lead with faith, you won't need that sign to go to church, or you won't need X, Y, and Z thing to happen to stop committing sin. The action has to start with you. It is not right of us to request action on God for us to act. It is the exact opposite, in fact. So, verse 25, and Moses said, Thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. So he's just basically explaining to Pharaoh, your plan doesn't work. We have to do it the way I've been saying it this entire time. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Again, the Pharaoh hardened his own heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, Get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more, for in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, Thou hast spoken well, I will see thy face again no more. I think verse 28 is really crucial for two reasons. One, remember, Moses is like a brother to Pharaoh. So to get to this point, he must have really been furious. But two, I feel like Pharaoh is looking at all of these plagues, and maybe he's got this kind of denial where if Moses doesn't tell him what plague is coming, then there won't be another plague. But just because you hide away from the signs and the prophecies does not mean those signs and prophecies won't come to pass, as we will see in the next verse, or next chapter, which is chapter 11. So chapter 11, the heading says, The departing Israelites are authorized to ask for jewels and gold from their neighbors. The Lord promises to slay the firstborn in every Egyptian home. He puts a difference between the Egyptians and the Israelites. And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. So this verse right here says, it shows that Moses still has status among the Egyptians. He's not some outcast or traitor to Egypt. He has status, which is why he was able to do everything he did with Pharaoh. Just walk up and talk to him, throw a snake at Pharaoh's face, and cause these plagues without being put to death, because in the eyes of the Egyptians, Moses was royalty. So it's just kind of one of those things that I often forget how Moses's upbringing could have played a role in him being able to do what he did. And all of that, of course, was directed by God. So kind of interesting to me. And Moses said, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more." So I personally feel like this last plague, and I have no idea, but I theorize that this is because there was no sacrifice performed. I feel like there was a hard time that Pharaoh had to adhere to what Moses was saying, so that way the Israelites could go out and sacrifice and feast and do that. And because that feast never happened, there still needed to be a sacrifice done. And that sacrifice happened in the most tragic of ways, being the firstborn of everything and everyone. So that's kind of my little theory. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's just kind of the thoughts that I had when I was reading that, especially there being 3 days of darkness, and Moses was saying, "Let us travel 3 days away." Had there been 3 days of travel instead of 3 days of darkness, then the Israelites would have shown up around the same time that the sacrifices needed to happen. But so on to verse 6, "And there shall be a great cry throughout." Oh, read that. Verse 7. Speaking of verse 6, though, "And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it." I personally am grateful that we don't have to do sacrifices anymore. I feel like a lot of weight of needing to do that has been taken off our shoulders, and it's something I'm grateful for, not only because of why, being that Christ's sacrifice has allowed us to not need to do them anymore, but it just shows how many different goals and things we have in these latter days. I think that back then sacrifices and rituals and things were very important. In these last days, it's bringing people to Christ. And so it's a different work, but it's, I don't know, just a thought I had. So verse 7, "But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all these thy servants shall come down unto me and bow down themselves unto me, saying, Get thee out, and all the people that follow thee, and after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Again, not hardening Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh hardens his own heart. And the Lord so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of his land. So that's a short and sweet chapter 11, kind of setting the precedent for chapter 12. Chapter 12 is a long one. It is 51 verses, but it is one of the most intense chapters, I think, in Exodus. So the heading, the Lord institutes the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Lambs without blemish are slain. Israel is saved by their blood. The firstborn of all Egyptians are slain. Israel is thrust out of Egypt after 430 years. No bones of the Paschal lambs are to be broken. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. So here's something important to note. In verse 4, it says, if the household be too little for the lamb. That is important for later on, and I will point that out when it comes to it. But remember that little bit, if the household be too little for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in the night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. And so verse 10 right there is where in verse 4 it's important. So verse 4, and if the household be too little for the lamb, basically saying if the lamb has too much meat that you couldn't eat it, share it with your neighbor. And in verse 10 it says, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. So they were not supposed to waste any of the lamb. They wanted to, they were commanded to eat everything they can, and if it so be that they can't eat all of it, they have to burn the remainder with fire. So kind of a little interesting bit that in verse 4 there is basically a little bit of a warning saying, you know, if it's too much for you to eat, then share, because it should not be wasted. But it's nice that if there is anything and they're full, they can burn it with fire. So just an interesting little thing I had noticed. And thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. That is a terrifyingly powerful statement. I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. I think that we as people tend to have these complexes where we feel we are super important, or that we are gods of our own world. But we are not gods. We can't execute judgment. Only the Lord can do that. It's just kind of I will execute judgment. I am the Lord, is a little bit humbling to me. So, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So I had a rather large thought on this one. Do you think that when we consecrate our homes and churches and temples, that the marks that it says, the blood shall be a token upon the house, do you think that that is as a token that marks them as a safe place for when the destruction of the apocalypse that will come is akin to like buildings that are consecrated to the Lord have a spiritual mark that will protect us from all the bad stuff in the last days. I know I see I see a connection there between them marking their houses with blood and us consecrating our houses to the Lord. They marked their houses with blood to show that they were serving the Lord. And when we consecrate our houses and temples and churches, I feel like it's of a similar nature. So verse 14, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, which means meeting, convocation. And in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No matter of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. I thought I had about this, and I'm sure there's stuff about it elsewhere, but my thought was, do you think that it has to be unleavened bread, as the bread represents Christ, and the Passover is representative of Christ dying, but not of his resurrection? So unleavened bread is bread that never rose. So they can't eat the leavened bread because that represents the living Christ. And since that hadn't happened yet, for them, it's like, you can't eat the living Christ because Christ has not come yet. So, to me, it was kind of like they have to eat unleavened bread because, Christ has not risen, has not been resurrected. That was kind of my thought process with the leavened and unleavened bread. So I don't really know, just thoughts. Verse 21, then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto your house to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye be come to the land which the Lord will give you, according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. At this point, there's no longer a one-time leave then come back. They're leaving and they're gone for good. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when ye smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. So did they. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. Also important to note, in verse 28, it says, and the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. This plague, all the other plagues, either Moses or Aaron started it. But this plague was not started by Moses or Aaron. They are simply working to protect themselves and the people from the plague. They didn't raise their hands. They didn't sprinkle dust. They didn't smack the staff into the water. They simply prepared for the destruction that the Lord was about to deliver to Egypt. So that was something I noticed. Out of all the plagues, this one, which is the most dangerous, so to speak, was done by God. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Can you imagine the sorrow that this would cause? I mean, if we were to do this nowadays, more than likely, if it was the firstborn in all of Egypt, I'm guessing that's like 20% overnight. I don't know the exact number of people who were firstborn in Egypt at that time, but let's say it's 20%, and let's assume that's correct. That means that if that were to happen in America, in one night, 65.9 million people would die. That would be absolutely devastating. I mean, you look at Marvel's Endgame, and Thanos snaps his finger and 50% of the population dies. This isn't, it's about half of that. Just under a quarter of the people would die. That would have to have been one of the most devastating thing of their lifetime, if not the most devastating thing of their lifetime. Verse 31, and he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. This right here shows me he still hasn't learned. So this last little bit, and bless me also, to me kind of feels like Pharaoh thought that just like all the other plagues, that it could be undone. Like, he begs for forgiveness, and once they're gone, then his son will come back. That's what it kind of felt like to me. Like, bless me also that my child can be resurrected, that all of these people can be resurrected. But like I said earlier on in the reading, actions have consequences, and the consequence was his child died, and he can't just undo that by doing the right thing now. It's too late for that. The consequence has already been enacted. So verse 33, and the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. And they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children, one thing to note, little thought I had, them borrowing the silver and gold and all that, made me wonder if this is perhaps the reason that they turn to idols later when they're in the wilderness. They've got all these silver and jewels and gold, And more than likely, because they are borrowing them from the Egyptians, they probably are, silver and gold of idols, of Ra, and of, these different Egyptian gods that they worshipped. And so, I don't know, just a thought I had. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men, besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, in flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. Now victual, by the way, is provisions. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, This is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. But every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and an hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall it be eaten. Thou shalt not carry forth out of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither shall ye break a bone thereof. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. And then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. So, end of chapter 12. That was a long one. That was, like I said, to me, one of the most intense chapters of Exodus. Let's move straight on into chapter 13, last chapter of the reading for Come Follow Me this week. The firstborn of man, this is the heading, the firstborn of man and of beasts are to be sanctified unto the Lord. The feast of unleavened bread is to be kept in the land of Canaan. Moses takes Joseph's bones out of Egypt. The Lord attends Israel in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hands the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month Abib. And it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites, and the Amorites and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he sware unto the fathers to give thee, a land flowing with milk and honey, that thou shalt keep this service in this month. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and in the seventh day shall be a feast to the Lord. There's so much symbolism with all of everything that the Passover is. And I'm not sure what all of it means, but at some point, I'd like to know all the little details. Unleavened bread, verse 7, Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee, neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in all thy quarters. And thou shalt shew thy son in that day, saying, This is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes. And the Lord's law may be in thy mouth, for with a strong hand hath the Lord brought thee out of Egypt. Thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance in his season from year to year. And it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, as he sware unto thee and to thy fathers, and shall give it thee, that thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix, and every firstling that cometh of a beast which thou hast, the male shall be the Lord's. And every firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb, and if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck, and all the firstborn of man among thy children shalt thou redeem. And it shall be when thy son asketh thee in time to come, saying, What is this? That thou shalt say unto him, By strength of hand the Lord brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh would hardly let us go, that the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all that openeth the matrix, being males, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. And it shall be for a token upon thine hand, and for frontlets between thine eyes, for by strength of hand the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt. So I'm just kind of reading through all this because I don't really know what it means. So I'm trying to read it in a way that is clear and cohesive. But a lot of this stuff I don't understand the symbolism. And I'm hoping that the Come Follow Me section reading will explain all of that. And it came to pass on verse 17, and it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near, for God said, Lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones away hence with you. And they took their journey from Succoth, and encamped in Etham in the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, by night in a pillar of fire, to give them light to go by day and night. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night, from before the people. And I was kind of wondering if this pillar of cloud and fire, if it worked similar to the Liahona, if it's based off of faith. I have no idea. It's possible that no matter what, that pillar of fire would have stayed, but I would think that their faith at this point would have been pretty strong. So that's the end of chapter 13. Next we'll get into is the reading for Come Follow Me.